Hey everybody, this is Perch, and you may have noticed this Midnight Suns. People are suddenly talking about Midnight Suns again. Why is that? Well, because there's a video game coming. They're going to do. There's a mobile. I think there's mobile. There's PS5, PS4, Xbox, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, PC, coming out in March of 2022. And so this is coming, and there's this new kind of RPG game that they're pushing, and it's a supernatural strategy game, and it's designed to kind of take some of these other characters. I think. And I'm not sure. I don't know if they've announced who's going to be in this game, but they've shown images of things like Blade and Doctor Strange and Ghost Rider, and anyway, a unique team of Marvel heroes who are banding together to take on Lilith, Mother of Demons. And there's, I guess, Wolverine, Captain America, Iron Man, Magic are also on this team. Who knows? Anyway, it's a video game, which means it will bear some minor, maybe none resemblance to whatever's going on there in the comics. But the comics do matter. And Midnight Suns has had a kind of interesting, weird little history. First off, I'm seeing a lot of articles talk about how it was one of Marvel's oddest superhero teams, and it was just a very strange experiment that would have never worked today. Except when this comic came out, it was in the early '90s, and it was no surprise that Marvel was going to do something like this. At the time, Ghost Rider was a pretty big deal. Things like vampires and Blade and kind of this supernatural horror. Although keep in mind, this is Marvel horror. So it's not, it's not like horror like we think about it today. It's not like even some of the core comics that that are out today. It's a very different proposition. And so it was kind of like, it was Marvel horror light, I guess, with a strong infusion of 90s spikes and chains and flowers and fire and no flowers. But a lot of that kind of stuff was going on. So I believe it was, they think, Johnny Blaze, who was a human. You had Danny Ketch, Ghost Rider. You had Morbius. You had Hannibal King. You had Blade. And you had some other people I'm forgetting. I'm sorry. There were some other kind of various kind of magic-like creatures and characters, and they came together to fight Lilith and her brood of Lilin. Nice plurality there. It's before the kind of demons could spread across the earth, and it was a fine comic. To many people, I think it has a lot of fond memories. It's very much a product of its time, meaning it's got kind of that 90s sensibility of both action and humor and costumes and horror, yes, and these other things. But it gave readers, I think, a chance to really dive in and put to the forefront a supernatural team, which Marvel hadn't done much of. So and then they we'll talk about it in a second. They played with it more a little bit over the years. So at the end of the day, it was a bunch of demons, and the demons are going to run amok, and these are the heroes who are kind of pulled together as an informal team to fight the monsters, and that's kind of what it was all about. And by the way, I just want to point out, if it sounds like I'm throwing shade at this, I'm not. It's weird to see a lot of articles talking about how crazy, horrific this title was. It definitely was not. It's still Marvel Comics. It was not like that kind of horror, but it was cool. And there was some good stuff about it. And it was interestingly enough, it seemed to come out, and then it did okay. But then it's like Marvel forgot that it existed to some extent, or they just started, it fell into the background as kind of maybe Marvel panicked a little bit and kind of doubled down on X-Men related titles. So it suffered in the sense that just as it got kind of rolling and I think was starting to get a very core audience, it was one of the books, and I can say this as a retailer at the time, that was people really fixated, the people it had, the people who came and were collecting this book were really into it, and they would collect anything that was remotely related to it, and they were hardcore devotees to this property, which is a shame that they then, proceeded to kind of abandon it. And a lot of people who are really into the Midnight Suns, I remember, they wandered away to several independent comics. Several of them went to Vertigo. It was a missed opportunity for Marvel, I think, to build up a really big kind of stable of collectors. But there's been, as I mentioned, they've touched on it again in the future. I believe, although I'm not positive, that Donny Cates made a pitch to kind of revive it at one point, although I may have been wrong about that. I know that there's been kind of different elements here. Usually, Morbius, Damian Hellstorm is in there, Man-Thing, Werewolf by Night, Jennifer Kale were involved. There was a Marvel Zombies bit. Doctor Strange in Civil War II. There was a sort of Midnight Suns reunion that included Blade and certainly Wong and let's see, Moon Knight was in there, Elsa Bloodstone, Doctor Voodoo. So they've kind of touched on this in the past, and I think it's one of those cases where there's a lot of very fond memories to this comic. And so, like I said, this video game is coming out. There's a 100% chance that with the video game out, that they're going to do they're going to come back and want to touch on this. And really, for Marvel, it's a huge, it's a missing area where they could absolutely get a lot more going with their properties. They have the whole Avengers line, they have the X-Men line, they have kind of a Spider-Man line. They've never fully committed to kind of a supernatural kind of area. In fact, we had a Ghost Rider comic that was actually pretty damn good before the pandemic, and it got canceled. And so I think that we'll see if they try it again. My prediction, and certainly, at least from trying to read between the lines a little bit of what I've been told, is that we will get a new Midnight Suns title kind of clocking in around February or March. But anyway, if you haven't seen this, as I mentioned, I now have the dates in front of me. Team first appeared in Ghost Rider actually in August of '92. And then they did this kind of imprint, this Midnight Suns brand from '93 till '94. And so it was a way to kind of pull in a number of titles together. And the Midnight Suns line included Morbius, included Darkhold, pages from the Book of Sins, Night Stalkers. There's another blast from the past. And then there was Midnight Suns Unlimited, which was an anthology type book. This is back when they actually did anthologies well. There was a bit in Marvel Comics Presents and Doctor Strange. So they got around it again. It was a very, it was popular. I guess I can't stress that enough. And that was why I came in to do this video in the first place. Is people were talking about this weird, quirky, offbeat book, but in the '90s. Ghost Rider, they were doing glow in the dark covers with a skull. Mark Dexter was on art, and you had, leather and chains and fire and that kind of stuff people were all over that. That title sold great. It also, for what it's note, there was an attempt in 2017 by Greg Smallwood, I believe. Yes, by Greg Smallwood, who is now working on Human Target with Tom King. And Greg Smallwood attempted to pitch a revival of the Midnight Suns that was going to include a team of Blade, Hellstorm, Doctor Strange, Hannibal King, Jennifer Kale, Johnny Blaze, Moon Knight, and the Punisher. And that would have been probably really smart for them to do at this time. Remember, he's pitching in 2017. So that comic, if they would have gone with it, would have come out in like 2018 or so. And they would have managed to kind of catch on to a lot of this kind of revival of horror and superhero horror, which Marvel, I would say largely slept on. So that was a project that was right there in their lap that they could have gotten a lot more on. But I don't know, Midnight Suns. So I'm curious the reaction to the people listening right now. Were you into Midnight Suns back in the day? Do you remember it? What's your memory of it? Because it feels like it's been, memory hold is the wrong word, but it feels like it's just been very misinterpreted. And it feels like people are remembering that moment very strangely. The Midnight Suns is a dark, gritty, supernatural, lightweight Marvel horror kind of book. Had a big fan base. It had people who were definitely into it, and it's just weird. Marvel's never come back to it. So let me know if I'm right or if I'm wrong, if you remember any of this. And if you've never heard of this before, are you going to play the video game? Would you be into a Marvel team like this, of kind of this supernatural horror type stuff? Was this something you would buy? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course. And thanks for listening.